Back again. Welcome everyone, both physically and online. Now we have the session on Lighthouse Initiatives that I have the pleasure to share. I'm not sure why it jumped like that, but okay. And my name is Olav Tande. I'm a chief scientist at SINTEF. I'm also heading the offshore wind activity within the EERA joint program WIN, and engaged in a project called SETWind, where we work also with these Lighthouse Initiatives. At this session, I will first start introducing the Lighthouse Initiative in a nutshell, if you like. And then we'll have 3 presentations on what we call grand research challenges. One is improved understanding of atmospheric and wind power plant flow physics, which will be presented by Jake Badger from DTU. Then we will have the second one on the interaction between aerodynamics, structural dynamics, and hydrodynamics. On large floating wind power plants, it will be Peter Echen from TNO, who is on the desk together with me here. And finally, we will have system science for integration of wind power plants by Nikos Koutloulis from DTU, which will join online. Finally, Jan Willem Wagenaar from TNO will summarize, and I get a little bit of feedback. He will summarize and sort of present the Lighthouse initiatives that we have developed together. Before that, before we end, we will have discussions. I hope everyone will join that. Of course, also during the presentations, don't hesitate to make notes of your questions, and we'll take questions right after each presentation also. So with that, I'd like to start my presentation on the Offshore Wind Research Lighthouse Initiative in a nutshell. So, what is the Lighthouse Initiative about? Well, first of all, it shares a vision, and the vision is that offshore wind farms will be the cornerstone of the future energy system. The European Union has a goal to have 300 gigawatts of offshore wind in Europe by 2050, to cover more or less 1/3 of the electricity demand in 2050. So obviously, at that point, offshore wind will certainly be a cornerstone of the energy system. So today, offshore wind plays an important role of the energy system, but quite marginal compared to what it will be in 2050. In 2050, it will be the cornerstone, and then the question is, how do you operate wind farms in 2050 or on the road towards 2050 to make sure that the power system can be operated in a reliable and safe and economic way? So that's the first sort of Lighthouse initiative we will look at, that challenge. The other one is on floating wind. And the reason for taking up floating wind is simply because most of the sea is deep sea. Most of the sea is more than 60-meter water depth. And at 60-meter water depth or deeper, most people think that only floating wind will be the only rational solution. But floating wind is still a new technology. It's more expensive than bottom fixed, and we need to make it more cost competitive in the future. The goal is to have it maybe at 50 euros per megawatt hour in 2030. And yeah, on a more personal note, I would say my goal is to have it the cheapest form of energy in 2050. So these sort of 2 Lighthouse initiatives that we call them, large-scale integration and floating wind. These are sort of the areas where we want to achieve something. We want to bring this forward as results that the European Union and the world needs to meet climate goals, to develop an industry, to have prosperity. But to realize that there are some grand scientific challenges that needs to be addressed. And before we started talking about Lighthouse projects, there were a group of scientists sitting down together and thinking, okay, what are the grand scientific challenges within wind energy? And they came up with 3 such grand challenges. And I think they're quite valid still. The first one is to have improved understanding of atmospheric and wind power plant flow physics. So how does the wind interact with the turbines? How does it flow within the wind farm? And not only being able to do that by supercomputers, spending weeks of simulation, but actually being able to do it on real time. Second one is to understand the interaction between the aerostructural, I would say also electrical and offshore wind hydrodynamics of enlarged wind power plants. So it's about the interaction within a large wind turbine, but also within a large wind power plant, and to understand the area interactions there. And these are very complex interactive systems and a grand challenge to understand. And finally, the system science for integration of wind power plants into the future electricity grid. Of course, these grand challenges will be elaborated further by the next speakers. I will not go more into them now, but simply say that our approach is then to address these 3 grand scientific challenges, to be more specific about what is the research challenges we shall solve. And then doing that, we will enable reliable power system operation with large-scale offshore wind and making floating wind cost competitive. We also think that this is best tackled taking an interdisciplinary approach. And we should consider the wind power plant together with the surrounding nature and the electric grid as part of the same system and understand the complex interactions of these parts in detail. The way we foresee this to be implemented is through a research and innovation call in an upcoming Horizon Europe program. If we're lucky, we'd like to see it in the program being published next year. And then we like to see calls for a large lighthouse project addressing more strategic research within the area of large-scale integration of offshore wind energy, and also to make floating wind cost competitive. And this project should be on the strategic research, so on low TRL, you could say, and it should address the sort of more basic and or fundamental challenges that we need to address for the further advancement of offshore wind. And it should be interdisciplinary, and it should, of course, still link closely with the industry and provide knowledge and basis for innovation. So to sum up, we think that the 2 Lighthouse initiatives represents a great opportunity for new industry, employment, innovation, and an efficient carbon-free power system. The need for research is well established. There are several reports that I have a picture of here that has established this. And we like to see these Lighthouse initiatives brought forward as large visionary research projects in the next European calls. So thank you. That's the Lighthouse initiative in a nutshell. And then I'm very happy to announce the next speaker, which is Jake Bajer from DTU Win.